the cloud. All right, in case anyone didn't know. So, all right, so anyway, let me just finish. All right, so everybody who is here so far, I just want to tell you that we've got a virtual show that's coming up in June. So June 16th to July 8th, and we will send you the information soon, but it's already up as a Facebook event and also on our website. And then we are also going to do another. Remember how we did the book group with Janet Foy last year? We're going to do another one this year with Andrea Waldo, who let me look at the name of the book here. It's called Taming That Lizard Brain, Brain Training for Riders, Unlock Your Riding Potential. Oh, where'd you go? Potential with stressless techniques for conquering fear, improving performance, and finding focused calm. So we're going to read that one over the summer. We're going to schedule like a once a month meeting, like three meetings for us to kind of do little workshops on, because there are a series of exercises for us to go through. And then we'll meet in September. We will meet with Andrea in a Zoom meeting as well. So that should be exciting. And we'll tell you about that soon in a newsletter that Daphne and I need to put together. So, but anyway, so other than that, then I wanted to introduce Rachel Mottet. Mottet?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, of Legacy Equine, and she is an equine nutritionist, and she's independent, so she's not beholden to anybody. So, and she's going to tell us about supplements tonight, and she's going to tell us about her program, which I'm going to do because my old man is needs a little bit of help. So,
excellent. Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for being on here. And the ceilings are really high where I'm at, so I'm hoping it doesn't sound like I'm in a stadium, but if it does, that's why. So sorry about that. I'm Dr. Rachel Mottet. I spent 12 years in college, unfortunately, to get that title, but I've dedicated my life and my profession to equine nutrition, and I absolutely love talking about it. I gave a similar talk to this about a week ago in Minnesota, and it's so good for me to be back on farm or back in front of faces, even by Zoom, but this is very enjoyable for me. So I'm hoping that some of you brought some supplements with you that you can ask about. If you didn't, I'm looking, as you can see on the side of me, I kind of grabbed a bunch of supplements from the feed room at my barn and just brought them in to talk about those if nobody brought their own. But what I would like to do today, I want to tell you about a couple things. I want to talk to you about supplements and give you some tools on how you can be a better consumer in a sea of, thousands of supplements that some are good, some are bad, a lot do absolutely nothing. And so, what I do, kind of like you had mentioned, Holly, is, what I do is I help horse owners like yourselves see what's good and what's garbage. And most of the time, the consults that I do and the programs that I do pay for themselves, sometimes within a month, sometimes within a year, but I don't work for anyone except for you. And so the info that I give you is unbiased. It's completely scientific based, and sorry about the barking dog now. So I don't have kids, but I do have dogs. So they apparently think it's time to eat, but that's too bad. At any rate, I work for you. So you are my clients. I did work for Purina for 7 years. And by having that experience, I got to learn a lot about how feed companies and supplement companies do business. And I got to learn who's not doing a very good job and who's doing a very good job. And I really make a point to not slam any companies or throw anybody under the bus, but I am absolutely going to tell you, if you're feeding something that I would recommend, staying away from, I'm certainly going to give you that guidance so you can have the healthiest horse possible. So that's, just a little pre-word. And I do have a program, I call it my Legacy Horse Program. And what that is, I am planning to make a trip down to Miami in the coming weeks. And at first I was looking at coming this next weekend. I lose track of days, but it may be a couple weeks from now. But what I do on that trip, and I'm going to share my screen with you for just a moment before I jump into the content, if that's okay. But what I do with that is I do an on-site evaluation with your horse, and I look at all of these parameters. And what I've realized, I've owned my own business for over a year, and I've done nutrition consulting for 8 years now between Purina and my own business. And what I've realized is, it's not just nutrition. If I'm going to help you transform your horse into the best horse it can be, I've got to look at its environment. I've got to know, are there things stressing it out? I've got to look at its muscle quality. I've got to get some ideas about what's genetically possible so I can help you set up a good goal for your horse. So I used to do hourly consulting where I would talk on the phone with people for an hour. I would give them a diet for their horse and kind of set them free. I don't do that anymore. The minimum program length that I have is about 3 months. But pretty much what we do is I meet your horse, I do and take all these measurements that you see, body condition scoring. I take a profiled picture and I teach you how to body condition score. We talk about your horse's health history, what its job is. I look at its environment. I look at the hay. I ask you even sometimes to ride for me so I can see how the horse is being worked. I learn about the daily schedule. And from there, I can help you set a goal that we can achieve. I can't make a thoroughbred look like a bodybuilding quarter horse type. I can't make, things that are miraculous with a horse or change its breed or disposition, but I absolutely can help your horse be healthy and get them the best, most balanced nutrition program possible. And so, that's a program I offer. And with that, I also include, it's an online learning platform that comes with it where you get tips on, strengthening your horse's hooves, some behavioral stuff and things to watch for in your horse, because I do have to stay current on the science with what I do. So it's sharing some of the information, like, did you know your horse can pick up on your heart rate or what kind of mood you're in from 50 feet away from them? Stuff that's based on the most current science. So in a nutshell, that's the program I offer. And you get a lot of one-on-one time with me where we check in each week for the first month, then we check in bi-weekly, and we do 30, 60, and 90-day pictures so we can track progress. So I'll make sure that Holly's got all the information that you would need to contact me with questions about this program. So we would talk over the phone and see if your horse would be a good candidate for this. So very briefly, that's my program. And if you were to look at my business, Legacy Equine Nutrition, I've got a Facebook page. You can find some of my transformation stories on there. You can find some of them. I run a group called Equine Nutrition Education. So if you're on Facebook and you're a Facebooker, you can join that group. And the only thing put in there are articles and case studies published by PhDs or DVM. So it's not general Q&A, but there are a number of really well-known nutritionists in there, including myself, professors, veterinarians, and you can get some really good content there. So again, that name is Equine Nutrition Education, if you're interested. Oh, there's sorry again about the background noise. Okay, so should I jump into supplements then? Is that okay, Holly? Awesome. I'll make sure that I get you some info as well, so you can contact me if you're interested in chatting more about my programs. So I'm just going to grab one of these as a prop, and hopefully you guys can see me. And the supplements I show you, there's not really any rhyme or reason to the ones I grabbed other than they were available and right in front of me. Okay, so I'm going to start with this Farnham supplement. Okay. So I want you to think about this. If you have any supplements for your horse handy, or you've got them with you, I want you to ask yourself right now, is anybody regulating what's actually in this supplement? Does anybody in this group know who regulates horse supplements? Any ideas? Probably not. Nobody. If you don't know.
Nobody.
What?
Nobody.
Nobody. That's okay. You wouldn't really know this unless you do what I do as a profession. So I don't blame any of you, but The equine supplement world is kind of interesting. I mean, in reality, it's regulated by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. However, it's very loosely regulated because the FDA is going to monitor food, drugs, so drug being more like a pharmaceutical. They're also going to be a regulatory body over dietary supplements, which of course equine supplements fall in the category of. But things get a little loose when it's not a pharmaceutical type of drug. We know there's a lot of regulation over those. We know there has to be clinical trials to prove their efficacy. However, did you know that I could probably take some spice out of my cupboard and put it in a tub and put, this is going to help your horse grow stronger hooves. I could even write on there, like, this is going to make your horse grow a unicorn horn. And you know who's going to stop me? Nobody, right? Okay. So what I want to teach you today is how to be a smart consumer and not buy some garbage that is not going to help your horse. So supplements are, like I mentioned, technically overseen by the FDA. And a supplement, by definition, is something that exceeds nutritional requirements or recommendations. So, you know, like for humans, we take our daily vitamin, we eat a balanced diet, so we get 100% recommended nutrition. Anything beyond that, same with the horse, is going to be considered a dietary supplement. So that means it's beyond requirements. It may or may not benefit, but it's not part of the required daily amount, okay? So like this that I have right here, like I mentioned, I moved to Florida last October, and this is an issue I'm really dealing with. I don't know if you guys can see this product, but it is called Sand Clear. And my horse likes to sleep in a big bowl of sand out in his paddock every single evening. And so, you know, I'm going to go through a little round of the Sand Clear to make sure that it doesn't build up in his system, which sand, of course, can cause colic. So I bought this product right here. And if you have a supplement in front of you, I want you to take a look for something. So I'm going to zoom in on this. Do you guys see that little yellow sign right there? Okay, so if you have a supplement, I want you to see if it has that. And what you'll notice, that little thing, it says NACS, that stands for NASC. That's the National Animal Supplement Council. Okay, so NASC is a private entity, and they were formed kind of in response to the FDA saying, you know, we're going to oversee animal supplements. Well, this is kind of difficult and there's not good regulation. So NASC, which is a for-profit organization, came along and said, you know, we're going to set up some quality standards and we're going to do some regulating in the supplement industry. And so when you see this NASC seal on your supplement, what that means is that this group, this organization, is overseeing and making sure that this is made ethically, that the supply is what it says it is, that the ingredients in here on the tag at these levels are actually what's going to be in this container. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, you know, isn't that every supplement? You know, isn't the amount of what it says on this label exactly what's in the tub? Well, not always. And you would be surprised to learn that there's a lot of supplements out there that what's in the tub is not what it says on the label. That the labels are, you know, grossly overestimating. Sometimes when there have been different third parties that come in and do investigate or evaluations on different supplements, sometimes, like if it's a probiotic, it might be an entirely different microbial strain than indicated on the label. So there are a lot of things that happen with supplements that we as consumers don't see by looking at this tub right here, right? So I see this Sand Clear, and like I said, this NASC seal that it has tells me that there is a regulatory group that goes in, like I said, looks at their manufacturing practices, looks at their supply of ingredient, and does independent testing on this. So does that mean if your supplement doesn't have that little NASC seal, does that mean it's not a good product? Not necessarily. Here's where things get confusing too. This NASC seal is kind of a pay to play type of thing. It can cost a business quite a bit of money to get this seal on here. Okay, but the seal means a lot to consumers. So a lot of businesses are going to have the seal, like all the products I've got in front of me have got a NASC seal. I've got MVP. I don't feed this personally, but I stole it from the feed room. You can see it's got that little yellow symbol. I've got a few Smart Pack items, and while they're teeny, teeny, tiny, you can see those also have the NASC seal on them. So it doesn't mean if your product doesn't have a NASC seal that it's total garbage, but nobody's really regulating it. Okay, so again, I could be Joe Schmo and I could put a bunch of oregano in a tub and sell it as, you know, maybe it's going to make your gelding or mare calmer, and nobody's really going to stop me. And I could put on the label, you know, these are actually rosemary leaves, even though I took oregano from my cupboard. And somebody, you know, might come along and be like, you know, this isn't actually true. You know, there's oregano in here, there's not rosemary leaves. And what happens then is they might report it to the FDA. So is the FDA going to act? Probably not, unless there's something seriously dangerous going on. And even in that case, I would make the assumption that they've got some bigger fish to fry. For instance, right now, I made a post in my equine nutrition education group recently about Summit joint supplement because it's being almost marketed as a drug, yet, well, not marketed as that way, but it is a drug, yet it's not FDA monitored. So that means there could be Sprite in those little vials, which of course there isn't, but there's nobody regulating what's actually in that little bottle that people are injecting into their horses. Okay, so this is problematic. And that's one really big glaring example. You know, people have complained about whether it's a supplement company or something that gets injected to the FDA, but I would say they're appallingly slow to act on things like this. And there have been cases where animals have gotten sick, but the regulation on equine supplements is pretty poor. So I want you to keep that in mind. And again, I want you to know, you know, there are some really reputable companies like Kentucky Equine Research. So KER, which is a brand or a company that I really like. They do a ton of research. They make good products. I know they're nutritionists, and like I said, nobody pays me anything, but they do a good job. They do not buy this NASC seal, and that's okay. I mean, I still fully trust them. So there are going to be some brands that fall outside of this. Like I mentioned too, it's a pay to play type of industry. So you might have these smaller supplements that are coming on the up and up, and maybe they can't afford to fall in line with NASC. Maybe they can't afford to get that label on there. You know, and the thing that NASC will also do is they're going to help these companies or these supplements with the wording on the product and on their websites. And if somebody sues you, NASC will go to bat for you. So again, this does cost money. Okay, another thing I want you to take a look at. So I'm hoping that you've got a supplement in front of you, but if not, I'm going to share some of what this says on mine. So a supplement, a true supplement, nowhere on here, unless it's a pharmaceutical or a drug, nowhere can it say prevent, mitigate, or cure, right? Those would be terms that are reserved for drugs. So something like GastroGuard, it can say, you know, this is going to cure ulcer. This is going to prevent ulcers. That is an FDA approved drug. This right here cannot say that it can cure or prevent sand colic, right? So what you're going to see when if you guys can give me 1 second, I'm going to put the dog outside. I don't know if you can hear it, but it is incredibly distracting. Okay, you're nodding your head. I'm going to fling him outside. So take a breather. Give me 1 sec. Okay, you guys, I'm back. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so if you have a supplement in front of you, something that I would want you to notice is you're going to see a lot of function claims. So on a supplement, like if you really read the fine words. This says, words like supports removal of sand and dirt. It can't tell you that it guarantees to do this. So you're going to see words like supports, promotes, helps maintain, and there are some supplements out there where you're going to see like 50 claims on the label. One is jumping into my head, and you might be like, how can it do all these things? I mean, sometimes some of these claims are a stretch. There might be something in that supplement, like not referring to this one in particular, but there's one that I think of in my head, and it's like, it's going to support, healthy bones, good aerobic, respiration. It's going to support hindgut health. It's going to do all these things, support all these things in one product. And sometimes when it sounds too good to be true, it truly is. But, you have to be careful. Some of these claims, which most of us consumers don't realize, are a bit loose. Like sometimes you'll see those supplements, supports bone integrity or bone density, when in reality, there might be an ingredient in there in a study in poultry or swine had that effect on them, although the dose needed is not in that product and it's not even in that species. So at any rate, that's why it can be really advantageous to work with a nutritionist, because I can help you sift through, this product, these are correct claims. So supports removal of sand in the digestive tract. This is a type of fiber that's going to help actually pull sand, supports gut health, and helps maintain a healthy digestive tract. A lot of supplements say that, but again, these are function claims. Okay, let's move on to a different supplement. Okay. So I get asked a lot about joint supplements, right? So this one is NASC. Something to know also about NASC and about joint supplements. So I'll start with NASC. Keep in mind, NASC, that yellow symbol, does not stand for does not stand for efficacy of the product. It is a quality measure. It says it's that group putting their stamp on there. Yep, we checked out this company. They're doing things ethically. They're using a good supply of ingredient, but this isn't telling us whether or not this product is effective at all. So just be cautious that, we look at this product right here. This is glucosamine XL plus with MSM pellet. Again, not a product of mine. Personally, I don't currently feed any supplements, and I usually don't feed any supplements other than a daily electrolyte or salt. So at any rate, this is not mine, but here's something that you won't know by looking at the tag, is that there are several different forms of glucosamine chondroitin, and not all of them are as bioavailable as others. In general, joint supplements can be very iffy. If you are giving a joint supplement, also, you should know some of them are intended for horses that already have inflammatory type conditions, and some are intended for maintenance. If you're doing something like a maintenance type of thing to try and prevent and try and restore integrity in the joints, doing something like a Cosequin, ASU, doing something with the glucosamine chondroitin and hyaluronic acid, those are going to be your best bet. However, this tag is not telling us, because oftentimes it's going to be proprietary, the exact chemical form of glucosamine that's in here. So some of these products, when you go a little cheaper, you're getting a less bioavailable ingredient and something that's not going to be, quite as potent as some of the other stuff. But it's, joint supplements too, like I mentioned, I get asked a ton of questions about them, and they're very iffy. And that's not fun to say when you're a nutritionist and somebody asks me, I want to feed a joint supplement. Is that going to help my horse? It is impossible to know. All of our horses, you guys being a group of people who like dressage, or even if you ride recreationally and do trail riding, there is normal wear and tear that's going to happen. I do low level eventing. At some point, my horse is probably going to need some hock injections. Maybe it's when he's in his teens, just to make sure he's comfortable. They're athletes. They have normal wear and tear. So sometimes if we have horses that we know have issues with joints, number one, it's best to talk to your veterinarian, because they're going to understand that clinical joint situation better than I will. But number two, if you have an actual issue, injections, we know 100% of that compound actually gets to the joint. Whereas, like I mentioned, sometimes with different forms of glucosamine, we aren't 100%. Even though if we looked at the tag, the therapeutic level of like glucosamine, usually you're going to find 8 to 10 grams of it, or 8,000 to 10,000 milligrams, but it doesn't tell us the full story. I'm like looking at the faces that are on here and I'm just worried. I'm like, I feel like I'm confusing you guys more than I'm helping you. So I hope not. But it gets really confusing. And it's hard if you also, some of the chemical mixture in here is very protected. And there are a lot of things that are proprietary. Like I mentioned, we don't know if this is the form of glucosamine that's the most bioavailable. We don't know for sure if that's going to make it to the joint of our horse. We know that some joint supplements do, but there are a lot of unknowns, particularly with joint supplements. There are a few supplements where I name a brand that's my go-to, but I do like to go with the supplements that have a little science behind them. Equine, like their orally fed joint supplement, that's one of them that's got some data behind it, which very few joint supplements do. And if you do join my Facebook group, Equine Nutrition Education, you'll know my true feelings about Summit if you didn't pick that up before, but I would highly caution you, if you are doing injections or anything like that, please do consider going for something that is FDA approved and monitored, because in that process of, mixing these chemicals, compounding them, especially something that you're going to inject into the body, there's a serious need for a sterile environment, one that's ventilated, and the FDA is going to heavily oversee actual drugs. So that's a little sidebar. Let me show you another supplement. Anybody in this group do any calming supplements? Calming supplements are very popular. Holly, I just saw you shake your head or nod your head. Yes. Calming supplements are very interesting. So here's what I want you to know about calming supplements, because a lot of people like to try them. There is one calming supplement that time after time I hear works for the majority of horses. And before I tell you what that one is, something to notice, calming supplements, a lot of times you're going to see either magnesium, you might see tryptophan, which is that amino acid that's really prevalent in turkey. That's why they tell you that you eat a lot of turkey on Thanksgiving, it makes you sleepy, when in reality, it's just because you've eaten a ton of food and the blood goes to your gut and makes the blood in the body more alkaline. Anyway, I had a digestive physiology professor go on a rant about that for like an hour during class once. So it's not the tryptophan, but you're going to see that in some of those supplements. There's a few other things, B vitamins, but magnesium's a big one. Another important thing that you wouldn't know by looking at the label, there are different forms of magnesium, some being more bioavailable and better for a calming effect than others. Usually magnesium oxide is going to be pretty popular for a calming effect. However, you can use other forms, magnesium malate. And it depends on the horse, because a lot of people are going to try calming supplements and see absolutely zero change in their horse, right? A lot of you might be like, yeah, I tried that, or I tried the Mare Magic, did nothing. I tried, this calming supplement. I tried essential oils. The science behind calming supplements is pretty weak, although anecdotally, a lot of people will tell you they see a difference with magnesium, okay? But you oftentimes have to try a couple, and you have to know in the back of your mind that sometimes we're fighting against nature. If I ride a thoroughbred and throw an extra splash of magnesium into his diet, is that going to calm him down? Probably not. So sometimes we're fighting against nature. But the one that I do hear time and time after time, if people go to a show and they have a horse that, gets super just wound up or wound tight being at the show, the one that competitors that I work with really like is called Perfect Prep. It's expensive. It's $21 for this tube. So, this costs a lot, but this is the only one that I get feedback on repeatedly that people have actual success with. You know, I can't guarantee it's going to work for your horse. Some people will swear by other ones, but it's absolutely worth trying. I kind of, go against the daily calming supplements because eventually your horse does get kind of used to that and they become a bit more desensitized. Like Perfect Prep does make a daily calming supplement, but you're better off if you're truly concerned about it and you're going to a show and your horse is going to be really hot at that show. You're better off to give them a blast on that day versus kind of slow trickle every single day. You're going to get a better result that way. So that's something, you can think about. I haven't seen tons of success with calming supplements, but again, people will swear at the show that the Perfect Prep works, which tells me, even though the label doesn't tell me everything, it's got, a magnesium chelate, a proprietary blend of tryptophan, thiamine, which is a B vitamin, magnesium amino acid chelate. So it doesn't tell me everything, but based on reports that I get, this is a pretty good one. Any questions about calming supplements before I hop on to the next one?
So even Perfect Prep actually makes several different ones. Does that even matter?
I always say that usually the Perfect Prep EQ Extreme is what most people will reach for. I haven't heard much of a difference between them in terms of efficacy, but people usually do the EQ Extreme. That's the one I find them on.
Yeah.
The one for $20, there's a couple of them in that price range, but those are going to do the job from the feedback I get. I'm trying to think of the names of the other ones that are around there, the Perfect Prep, Extreme, EQ, whatever it may be, but I get really good feedback on that one. And there's nothing in there, like they don't have a NASC seal on them, but like sometimes you're going to get these, quality products. Like I still trust this product. I still, recommend that people try it, even though I'm trying to peel off the label and see if there's a NASC seal under here. I don't believe there is, but this tends to be a good one. Looks like Daphne, do you have a question?
Yes, sorry. What about CBD oil?
Yeah, on the CBD oil, definitely more anecdotal. There are a lot of products out there, whether it's CBD oil, hemp. In terms of effects on the horse, me trying to be a good scientist would tell you that the data in horses is severely lacking. There's really not a whole lot out there of anything in the horse that's either been done, trialed, or repeated. And I personally know a hemp farmer that's been trying to get a university for the last few years to do some research with these products and make them, anecdotally, people will tell you that it does have a positive impact on their horse. I would say sometimes maybe that's a little placebo. It's possible that there is some truth there. The nice thing, if I know I'm making kind of a blanket statement, so not just CBD oil, but hemp itself, like if you're thinking, which those are two different things, but you get some good amino acids from hemp. It's a good source of protein, but those products in horses, not tons of science. You're going to get some nutrients from them, but like the CBD, have you tried that personally, Daphne?
No, a student of mine, and she said it worked, but he's been on it for quite a long time. He's a quarter horse, and it seems like it's wearing off a little.
Yeah, and that absolutely happens. And that's kind of why, like I mentioned about the calming supplement, sometimes you're better off with a blast that kind of blindsides you a little bit, or you get, something a little novel into the system that your body's going to have a nice heightened response. I mean, because it isn't a drug per se, it's not going to build up in the body like if we were taking, a different drug, but it's, anecdotally, I'd say it's really iffy in the reports that people give me that use it. If you're feeling like it's wearing off, it very likely is. Knowing your own horse better than me, better than anyone else, a lot of times I'd say that's a very real occurrence if you do something long-term to have that strength kind of, it's almost like if you've ever taken, different medications, sometimes we need to change our dosing. Our body just kind of stops responding to that level. And of course, CBD oil is a bit different in a sense that it's not a drug per se, but that's a very real response that can occur. And I'm glad you actually said that, because with supplements in general, what I find is a lot of people will be on a supplement, for some time, and they'll be like, oh, it's working. But a lot of times people say, I'm not sure if it's working. Most supplements, you should be able to see a difference within about 10 days to 2 weeks. So for instance, if you're trying a calming supplement, if you're trying even a joint supplement, and your horse is having some, inflammation, they're having some offness potentially from that, you should be able to see a result in about 10 days. And especially with the calming one. So if you try it for that period of time and you're like, nothing's happening, you're probably not hurting anything, but a lot of times, we know our horses, if you're not seeing anything, likely it's not doing a whole lot. And so with you having the feeling that the CBD oil just isn't giving you the response it did, I would believe that, and that happens to horses with other substances that, probiotics. If we've got horses with pretty chronic gastrointestinal upset, we do probiotics, and after, a month or two, the diarrhea comes back, or whatever the symptom was that we were giving them that for. So I would not be surprised. Thank you for that question.
Yeah,
or for that feedback.
Rage these days for people and for dogs, for cats, for all, it's like this craziness that they have about the CBD. And by accident, I have somebody who, that uses used the product on our horse. And I wanted to ask you about the joint supplements. With some of the joint supplements that I've given, and I give my horse Summit, and another horse I ride, I do give him Summit. With my horse, to be honest, I felt a difference.
Yeah.
The other horse, I do not. And sometimes I feel that, at least I'm hoping that the horse feels the difference.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know, really, right?
Yeah, it can be impossible to know. And yeah, on the Summit topic, there are a lot of people who have provided positive testimonial. Like they feel a difference. So we definitely know there is, there's some good in that, that product. What I want supplement do is to be better and to get the FDA involved, because it's not fair that they haven't done clinical trials. But yes, there are people that are seeing some positive benefit. If you don't in the other horse, something worth considering, like, do you do any injections with your vet on the other one, or is that one?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
A lot of times that's going to trump the effects that we see from fed joint supplements. But what you can do if there is arthritis going on, or if there is some type of inflammation, look for a joint supplement that's got resveratrol in it. And not all of them will have that, but that's probably, Holly, that's going to be in the supplement that you held up, probably, the resveratrol. That's going to have some anti-inflammatory properties, and that's more of an exciting one as of the last couple of years in terms of glucose homeostasis, and then also for arthritis, that we're seeing in the horse. So it'd be worthwhile to try a joint supplement that's got that in it. I would suggest talking to your vet. But, it's so hard. You wish that they could talk to us and tell us if they feel better, but I'm happy that your one horse is responding and seeming more comfortable. But yeah, joint supplements are really iffy. And like I mentioned before, if you're going to feed one orally, I like to go with the trusted brands. Like if there isn't, I'm trying to think, I don't think the Equine ASU has the resveratrol in it, but that's my go-to most of the time for people who want it just for maintenance and to try and prevent wear and tear.
More to spread out the joint injections that I do. He's 12 years old. I don't want him, to be crippled when he's 18, So I'm trying to find something that can space out those joint injections. And he's been worked 3 times a week, very low intensity riding. So it's not like he's a competition horse or whatever. I just want him to last, you know?
Yeah, it's absolutely worth a try.
Yeah, I'll change. I'm totally open to change and try something else.
Yeah, and I'd say too, you know, like I mentioned, chatting with your vet, and it's interesting, you'll talk to different veterinarians and different nutritionists, and some of them don't believe in joint supplements, the ones that you feed at all. You know, and there's some vets that are going to feel that way. It's just very iffy sometimes on the quality of that glucosamine, the bioavailability. So if you have one that's responding, that's wonderful. But yeah, for the one that isn't, it's certainly worth trying other things. It's just, like I mentioned before, it can be almost impossible to indicate or to know how much it'll help, but it's certainly worth a try. Like I get that, you know, they're our best friends. It's worth putting a few extra dollars in every month and just giving them a shot.
Yeah. Do you
Looks
think
like,
it makes a difference if it's a liquid or if it's a powder?
oh, that's a really good question. I got that one last week too. I mean, you can get, I would say there are some powders that are really good. The brand that I mentioned, liquid is going to be preferred at times as well. It really depends on the brand. Which brand are you referring to?
Choice of Champions, for example, claims that the joint supplements have to be liquid because if it's powder, it gets lost in the feed if they don't put, let's say, water in it or something to make it stick to the pellets.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. That was it. That's why.
Yeah, I would say that that's not entirely accurate. You know, the bioavailability is going to be a bit different in liquid, and I'd have to look up that product. I haven't looked at that one in a while. I do believe that's one of them, the liquid forms. That's a good one, but that's, you know, it's not entirely true. Like it's a bit of a stretch. You're going to get some better absorption potentially in the liquid form, but you know, at the levels that are in some of those joint supplement products that are powders out there, with some research behind them, we do know that the amount in that powder is getting absorbed. It is getting to the joint. Like they do different trials where they'll radio label these different ingredients that they're trying to see if they make it to the joint. So we do know that they're still effective and they do work, but particularly for the horse of yours that maybe is not responding, it'd be worthwhile to try a different form.
Yeah.
So that may be something you consider too.
Okay, thank you. I'll shut up now.
Oh no, they're such good questions. And sometimes, you know, the part of the nutrition, being a nutritionist is not always fun because there's a lot of gray area and it's a lot of, well, I know it's not going to harm your horse, but bioavailability is also a very different thing to talk about because all horses, like all humans, we metabolize things differently. You know, we could all eat the same diet and at the end of the year, look very different from one another. You know what I mean? Like some of you guys in this group maybe could eat at McDonald's every day. If I did that, I'd weigh 300 pounds by the end of the year. So they're unique in how they metabolize, you know, things even beyond nutrients, anything we put in their body. So it's a really good question. And I hate to be so kind of gray area, like, well, you could do that, but you know, unfortunately, sometimes that's just how it goes. Okay,
Yeah,
Milena, it looks like. I'm hoping I see your thing. Milena
Yes.
Maria.
Hi. Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. I have a question also about supplements. I have like a 17-year-old mare. She's gonna turn 17 in September, and I give her Equine and the Equicox. And
Okay.
to tell you the truth, I have seen that it hasn't done anything. So I also inject her once a year, but I hadn't injected her since like a year and a half because I don't know, I don't like these chemical things.
Okay.
But I started seeing that she was like not very comfortable. So I go, no, I have to do something. So I tried Equine. I haven't had it for I've only had it like, I think used it for 3 months. And I really saw that nothing was happening.
Okay.
So I started to inject her again and I've seen an improvement. So I don't know if that's a combination of everything or not. And also my main concern, do you think that I'm giving her too much for the joints? All these 4 things, is it too much?
Well, Because if you're giving, so right now you're doing, you're still giving Adequan, or did you discontinue that one?
Adequan, no, I bought for 6 months, so I think I have 3 more months. I wanted to
Okay.
try it. I had never had it before.
Okay. Okay, so you're doing all the 4 kind of all at the same time right now, if I'm understanding, right?
Yes.
Just making sure.
Is
I'm
it too
following.
much? I feel so
Okay.
bad for it. Is it too much?
I mean, I would, so here's some things that you might want to consider doing, because, it's hard to know if it's a combination or if there is one of those singly that would get you the same result. In terms of, overdoing it on joint supplement, it'd be pretty hard to do to a point where it was truly, harmful to the body, when we, more of a good thing isn't always going to give a better result. But I would recommend chatting with your vet, because you said you're doing Equiox, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So sometimes too, checking with your vet on the dosing of that, and seeing even if you would want to do a little isolating of some of these different things to see if you can identify if it's one versus the other, because, like I mentioned, more of a good thing isn't always better. And if it is just one of them, also, putting less into the horse, but also from an economic standpoint, it's possible it's just overkill at this point. But I would chat with your vet, particularly if you didn't feel like the Equiox was doing anything. Make sure that it's, the right amount, everything's good there. But I would, if you could, try, for at least a 2 to 3 week period, if you could, give your horse a little washout period where you're, just doing one of the joint supplements for a period of about 3 to 4 weeks. See if the good feeling that she seems is sustaining, or just try isolating them. Talk to your vet about that, but go through a round and try and identify which one's giving you the best benefit. And it may very well be a combination, but I would definitely try isolating them if you can, because you're going to have some overkill where it's not, all this extra isn't really doing anything.
Yeah, because I don't want to
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. I'll do that, because I don't want, her to give her too much stuff, and then no. I feel really bad for her. Okay, thank you.
No problem. And yeah, I mean, if you were interested at all in doing a program, something else I do, if we've got horses with issues that involve some type of dietary intervention or injections or medications, I'll work with a lot of veterinarians, so we're all on the same page. But I would say it would be, and I totally get that, kind of throwing the whole kitchen sink at them, not that you're entirely doing that, but we'll give them all of these good things and just hoping something sticks and helps. But sometimes we get away from, maybe if there's one of those things that's doing a great job on its own. So yeah, I would recommend that kind of isolation method that I just mentioned, and see if you can pinpoint which one it is.
I will do that. And just one last thing. Do these supplements and the injections and all these chemicals, what effect do they have on the stomach of the horse?
It depends, because some of them, if you're injecting them into the muscle, or if they're being injected into the joint, that's where those contents are going. Or if they're going to the muscle, they make it to the bloodstream, they get to the joint. So not all of them. In terms of dose, like especially if you were feeding them, I would have to look up the dose that would be hard on the stomach, because truly anything in too much, or in excess abundance would be hard on the stomach. So I will look up and I'll send that info to Holly to see if there is, a certain dose. I think you'd have to really overdo it, but I'll find that info, just, give you a little peace of mind there. If you're injecting them directly into the joint, you shouldn't have issue with those. But if you're doing any feed throughs, which it didn't sound like you were, other than I'm trying to remember.
Cosequin, the Smart Pack Cosequin and the Equicox or whatever that thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was trying
She doesn't like the Cosequin, and she leaves it there. She doesn't eat it. She doesn't like it very much.
She doesn't.
Yeah.
That might not be a good one to spend money on then. Or if she's leaving it behind, she's helping you with that elimination process. So if you're seeing a good result and she's leaving it behind, that might be an easy one to try without.
Yes, you're right. Thank you very much.
No problem. Yeah. Looks like Lori has a question. Lori, are you there?
Or you gotta mute yourself, or I can unmute.
Hi.
There you go.
Hi.
Well, it's really nice to meet you. And thank you. This is so informative.
Good.
I think the subject that's maybe nearest and dearest to our hearts here in Florida is electrolytes, salt, hydration, all that.
Yeah. So you just kind of looking for what's the best, or?
Oh, I don't know. I kind of feel like I've had the best for a long time. And, but, you know, sometimes I know because I run a small boutique barn and
Yeah.
every horse has a different need.
Okay.
Some of them need this plus salt. Some don't pee, some drink, some don't drink, you know, so it's a fine dance. And I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely, I can. And something I'd recommend too, there's a podcast out there that is put out by Stride Animal Health, and it's called The Feed Room Chemist. And I'm glad you asked this question, Lori, because about a month ago, I was invited as a guest speaker on that podcast, and it's run by, the director of their equine nutrition. And she invited me as a guest speaker to talk about salt. The whole presentation, I talked for about 25 minutes about salt. So it's going to give you a little bit more info there, but here's a couple key things that need to know about salt in the diet. Number one, so salt, which is sodium and chloride, kind of, married together. That's table salt, sodium chloride. Both of those compounds or minerals, those are required in the equine diet. You are not going to get salt at an appreciable level in the hay or in the feed. One big reason you're not going to see it at the right level in the feed is because it is not very palatable when you add a lot of salt. So palatable, meaning, tastiness. So for a feed company, it's not a good day if you put in the amount of salt that's going to make the horse not eat the feed, right? So you're not going to find it at adequate levels in the feed or in the hay, right? So what you have to make sure is we always need to have at least free choice salt offered. Here's where things get tricky. A lot of us have, the white salt blocks in our pastures or in their stall, and a lot of horses don't like them. So here's a challenge. Salt blocks and mineral blocks were originally designed for cattle. And if you've ever been on a cattle farm or even just been around cows, they are prolific lickers. Like they will lick your sleeve, they'll lick your hand, they'll lick your hair, they'll lick your kids, like they'll lick everything, right? And they're really good at licking salt and mineral blocks and tubs. And so with horses, we've also kind of adopted, put out the salt block. But what we find is intake is variable. And horses do have an intrinsic drive to seek salt. However, some of them are so put off by the feeling of that kind of sandpapery like block on their tongue that they won't go to that salt block and actually lick it. So it's really important to know and to be in tune. So if you have a horse that won't lick the white salt block, one of my horses currently included, I put it out there and it just, pretty much washed away with the bad storm we had. Like he didn't want it, sat out there. So that's when I said, okay, I've got to offer him a different form. And sometimes people will make the assumption, well, if my horse isn't licking the salt block, he's fine, he's got all he needs. But we do need a horse that will ingest the form of salt we put out. So if they're not licking that white salt block, here's some things that you can try. Because again, a horse needs salt. At maintenance, your horse needs about 2 tablespoons of salt per day. And the biggest thing that's going to help us with is maintaining hydration. Okay, so if they're not licking that salt block, you can offer like a little tub, on the side of the stall of loose salt. Horses will more readily consume that than the blocks, based on some research that Kentucky Equine Research did. If they don't like that, you can try a Himalayan salt lick. Don't be confused. There are no magic properties in that, salt on a rope. It's very clever marketing. But some horses seem to like the taste and texture of it. My own horse will lick the Himalayan salt. He won't touch the salt block. I think it's more of a texture thing truly than it is, a taste. And, it doesn't mean that it's better, but he does lick it. So that's what I give to him. And so you can kind of cycle through some of those. So electrolytes, and actually in the summer being down here in Florida, I've started giving a daily electrolyte. And an electrolyte is going to differ from a salt in the sense that beyond sodium and chloride, you're getting some other electrolytes, potassium, you're getting some magnesium, you're probably getting some calcium in there. You're getting some of the electrolytes that can come out when your horse is sweating excessively. So in Florida, I'm noticing some days my horse might be in the pasture and just sweating because he's existing. I mean, it's hot down here. You guys know this better than I do. You've lived here. I'm from Minnesota and I am melting, right? My horse is too. Like, he's not happy at all. So he gets a daily electrolyte. And also because I ride in the summer and he sweats and he's losing more, and so he needs more than just that minimum 2 tablespoons sodium chloride. So daily electrolyte. Oh, I'm hearing oh, sounded a little Twilight Zone like. Okay, I think we got the mute situation.
Oh, sorry. I muted the wrong person. Let me mute. Caitlin, I think Caitlin's moved on to to a different, probably she's moved from the computer to a phone. And
okay.
So anyway, but I think she's good now. So.
Okay. So a daily electrolyte can absolutely be helpful if you have a horse that's sweating a lot. The biggest thing you're doing is getting your horse hydration. And if you're on the road, if your horse has been trailered somewhere, they are sweating. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't. But a horse that is dehydrated, it's like for every % dehydrated they are, gosh, I know I'm going to screw this up, but it's like a 10% decrease in performance capacity. So hydration is so important. And what we deal with in the north, that's different than down here, temperatures get cold, you get into winter, and horses don't drink as much water. And that can happen in really hot temperatures too. So if you have a horse that's not licking or consuming any type of salt from a block or from what you're offering him, add it to the daily ration. You can either do plain, iodized table salt, do 2 tablespoons a day. That's kind of your minimum maintenance requirement. And right now you might be thinking, is it okay to do iodized versus non-iodized? Absolutely. I usually do iodized because even though iodine can become toxic at high levels in the equine diet, it is incredibly low in feed and hay. So you do actually get a little bit of that requirement met from the iodized salt. But electrolytes, if you've got a horse that's sweating every day, working hard, absolutely. And that's, like I mentioned, that's the only thing in addition to a balanced ration that my horse gets every day. That's the only thing. And that's important. I mean, he's young, so he hasn't broken down, and God willing, he won't. But over time, we know something goes awry eventually. But it's really important to give them and offer that daily. So hopefully everyone, the next time you go out and see your horse, take a look at that block. If it's been sitting there for a month collecting dust, try a different form. I would caution you though, sometimes what people do, this is slightly related, but mineral blocks, sometimes people put out mineral blocks and they'll call me and they'll be like, Rachel, he went out there and ate it like candy, like he must have been deficient in something. I'm going to say, go to that tub and look at the ingredients, because some of those blocks are going to have molasses as the first ingredient. So if you put out a, salt and mineral block and your horse eats it like candy and you've been feeding your horse a good balanced diet, it probably is candy. It probably tastes like candy, because minerals aren't that good, not even for people, right? You guys have probably had them before. Your daily vitamin mineral. That's why they make them gummies now, because they're gross. They're gross. So no animal or human likes minerals that much that they're going to eat it like candy, right? So be cautious of that. But I would say, super important. And if you are feeding an electrolyte daily, I want you to look at the tag and I want you to make sure that the first ingredient is salt. Okay. First ingredient should be salt. And if it's not, just send me an email and tell me what the first ingredient is, but it shouldn't be some type of sugar. It shouldn't be some type of sugar flavor. I've actually, in my pile of supplements, I do have one that I stole from the barn. This isn't the electrolyte that I feed, but it's a Farnham one. It's an apple a day, which is pretty popular. You would know as well as I do, when you feed a daily electrolyte, a lot of times it sifts to the bottom of the grain, and then you've got wasted electrolyte that is at the bottom. I'm going to take a look. So the first ingredient here, salt. Excellent. Second ingredient, potassium chloride. So that's a compound of potassium and chloride, of course. Those are electrolytes. Magnesium, sulfate, calcium. And the last flavors, artificial apple flavor and artificial coloring. Don't love it, but not concerned, especially at the small amount that's in here. Let's see. Trying to see if I find anything else that sticks out. But, on here, it's going to tell you for maintenance, 1 to 2 scoops. I'm guessing this scoop is an ounce. Trying to see if it smells any good. I don't know. It smells pretty good. I don't know if you guys ever give your feed or supplements a taste test, but I do. And I tell you, it's pretty gross, but I'm like, well, I had a dog vet that would always test the dog treats. I don't go to that level, so I think it's not that bad at any rate. So be on the lookout for that with electrolyte supplements. It looks like there's Sue maybe had a question, or hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like she's unmuting or. Oh.
Thanks. Okay. So I have a horse that has a lot of allergies. Skin allergies is how they come out. And I'm wondering the role of oils, if it will help her get any relief, or she's allergic to many ingredients in grain, as well as every single insect they tested for. And so it's just a tough equation.
This is the horse that Heinrika had contacted you about.
Yes, it is.
So I've got in my text message, yes. And again, it's been quite a day with the interns, which is why I have not responded yet. But I did see that you had sent, let me just pull that up really quick while I've got my phone on the other side of me. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, so I do work with a number of horses with allergies and ingredient sensitivities. What kind of symptoms are you seeing when things get bad with her?
She gets kind of welted on the skin. She'll lose hair. It'll get red and irritated looking.
Okay. Have you tried anything that you've had any success with, or is this kind of a new thing for her?
The most success we've had is eliminating a lot of things. So, and keeping her in at night,
Yeah.
So and that's proved to improve her condition, but I'm looking to improve it further now. She's going out a little at night, and now it's getting bad again.
So really good questions. From a dietary standpoint, there are things we can try, although there's certain type of oils that I definitely reach for in these situations that are going to have stronger anti-inflammatory properties to the extent at which they're going to boost immune response, almost impossible to say. But, there's certain, like fish oil is our best source of omega-3s we can get. And there are some equine fish oil products, but some of them are very non-palatable. So usually we go through a program when I work with clients where we potentially try 1 or 2 different kinds. But an oil can help the skin, like that, fat in the diet, we know, and particularly oil in the horse, even just a swig. Like when I was a kid, we don't do it this way anymore, but all horses got a swig of corn oil to give them a nice shiny coat. And we, that's long tried, tested, and true. But, when you think about oil for allergies, we're looking at a different profile of the fatty acids in that oil to try and mitigate or try and have some impact on inflammation in the body and immune response. So it's really difficult, what I would say, to cause, especially if you're seeing the symptoms that you are, it can be very difficult to have a huge impact through nutrition, but there are things worth trying. there are things like my PhD focused on looking at different types of prebiotics, excuse me, because there are ways that we can try and manipulate or, impact the microbiome of the horse, which can be involved in the inflammatory response and can be involved in, the good cells in the body that are going to help fight that response and help strengthen the integrity even in the intestines and have other good benefits in the body. So there are some things worth trying, but I will say there's not usually a magical cure through nutrition. The best thing we can do is just give the body every single tool possible to be strong in the case where there are allergens at play. Have you tried antihistamines or anything with your vet that they've recommended?
No, haven't tried that.
Sometimes too, and I'm always cautious, like sometimes, there's going to be these companies out there that are going to say, send me what your horse is allergic to, and I'm going to give you this concoction. I'd say if you're thinking about that down the road, talk with your vet, but sometimes too, allergy testing, if you do it on the same horse twice, sometimes you get a few different results.
Oh, really?
And
that's interesting.
Yeah, allergies are so complex. I mean, without a doubt, your horse, based on everything, your horse certainly does have allergies, but sometimes, you do it on that same horse twice. If they're not having a flare, if they are having a flare, you can get different results. Sometimes you get false positives, sometimes you get negative positives. So it's really difficult. There are diets that we can create too that are still balanced, but I've got a horse right now I'm working with that has severe allergies, to everything that's most common in horse feeds, like, wheat, flax, rice bran.
That's her.
That's her. Yeah.
There are ways that we can put diets together that are balanced, and she's going through a program too. She just ordered a few products to try and give that horse every bump possible to, be healthy and to not suffer from these attacks. But sometimes it does come down to doing an actual, getting an antihistamine from the vet. Some people even crush up Zyrtec, costs a fortune. I know a few horses that have severe allergies that the owners crush up, 20 pills of Zyrtec every day. And it's like, I take Zyrtec myself and it's expensive to take one pill a day. But it'd be worth having a conversation with your vet to see, they'll know the clinical picture much better than I would, but to see if that's, a good route given where things are at. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly things we could try if we did a program, but allergies are hard and very complex. I don't know if you guys have them, but Florida has been kicking my allergies and I hear like I can't breathe anymore. Thank you for that question. And
no, thank you.
sometimes too, and the reason I don't do hourly consulting anymore is, all these questions that you guys are asking me, and you kind of hear me say, well, sometimes we have to cycle through things. Sometimes we have to try plan A. And if, 99 out of 100 times plan A is the best plan, but particularly with horses with allergies, I work with horses that have chronic renal disease. Sometimes we've got to try plan B, C, and D until we get the perfect fit, so these are really good questions. So I'm glad you're asking them. And looks like Daphne, maybe you have a question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, one more question. Is there a possibility that a horse, let's say if it has a salt block in its stall, to ingest too much salt, and can it damage the horse?
Really good question. So if there is free choice fresh water, then really no. The only time, so about 5 years ago, I'm glad you asked that question. I was at a vet clinic and they did an open house night and they invited me to be a speaker. And I don't know how I always get the salt topic, but I do, and I like talking about it. So I'm glad you asked. But I was telling people, it's almost impossible to overdose a horse on salt. It's, different from people where we're increasing our risk of atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease, a bit different in the horse. And salt, being a water soluble substance, they do actually, if they have excess, they do flush that out really efficiently. There are some things that the body can hang on to. Salt isn't one of them that it just stores up for a rainy day. So with that said, so I was talking to these people, you know, telling them about salt, and I got that same question. And there was this vet that happened to be around the corner, and she said, oh no, I knew a horse that actually became very, very sick because the salt had fallen into, it was either a trough or a bucket of water, and the horse did not have access to clean, fresh water. So that horse, it's just kind of like if you got stranded in the saltwater ocean, you know, you need fresh water. Otherwise, your body, you can become toxic. But as long as fresh water is present, it is just fine. You know, if your horse is eating it by the mouthful, I have only seen that happen one time in my career, and that was a severely emaciated, malnourished horse. So there were some interesting circumstances going on there, but you know, typically there is kind of a physiological cutoff, but it would be really almost impossible in the event that, you know, there's free choice, fresh water available, that they would become toxic in salt. With that said, there are some horses that are very ulcer prone or prone to, you know, stomach upset, can be a little more sensitive to salt. It can be a little harsher on them, but there are a couple companies that make like encapsulated salt, so it bypasses the stomach to, you know, not irritate that that environment, because the stomach, as we know, is vulnerable to ulcers, particularly the upper half of it. However, what I would say is most horses I know that do get ulcers do get salt mixed in with the ration and do just fine. Don't need a special type of salt or electrolyte. You know, we don't see symptoms super often that tell us it's aggravating the stomach. You know, a racehorse might be a different story, but it doesn't sound like we're a race group here. So it's yeah, it's not something I've seen, but like I said, that vet, she's just like, oh no, the salt block went into the water. So just make sure you keep it separate from your water, which, you know, seems like common sense, but there's things I do every week where I'm like, wow, that I should have been a lot smarter than that. I shouldn't have done that. And I did it anyway. So just something to think about.
Yeah.
Good
Okay,
question.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other supplement questions? I mean, we could go on all night. I mean, I love talking about nutrition, but I'm not going to.
Caitlin has a question.
Oh yeah.
She's actually using a real hand. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I was looking for the little like orange
Oh, I
hand.
don't even know how to do that.
Go
No,
right.
I just wanted to see your opinion on ulcer or gastric supplements.
Oh man, that opens a whole can of worms. It depends. So, oh gosh, we might have to have part 2, Holly. Like this just
Right. Yeah.
So the long and short of it, it depends on which organ you're targeting. So if you're feeding, like right now, what's really popular are seaweed derived gastric buffers. And it's, you know, like Purina makes one called Outlast. Triple Crown puts it into some of their products. They have a seaweed derived calcium, and you get really good buffering from these in the
In your feed, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and you get, you know, some buffering of the stomach, because when the stomach, it can become a pretty hostile environment, or it can become very acidic pretty quickly. So it's kind of like liken those to taking a big swig of Pepto-Bismol, right? It's coating the stomach, keeping that comfortable. So there are some good acid buffers out there for the stomach, okay? There are some things that target the hindgut. And we get into a much more complex situation like prebiotics and probiotics. Probiotics are direct fed microbials, meaning they're intended to be live bacteria, live microorganisms that we believe to be beneficial in that environment. Prebiotics, that's what I studied in my PhD. What those are different types of fibers that provide food for the good bacteria in the hindgut. Okay, so they're not living organisms, but they give food to help upregulate the colonies of the good guys in the hindgut. So when we, you know, target hindgut health, and there are some things, you know, products out there that are going to help, in theory, buffer the hindgut, you know, some different bicarbonate type products that are more neutral, that, you know, claim to have the technology to make it to the hindgut, help buffer that area. So it depends. There's some really good ones out there, and there's some really sketchy ones out there. What you do need to know though about those supplements is they are different than GastroGuard. So for instance, like if you have a horse with ulcers that need to be cured and they are, causing symptoms, you do have to go through with your vet, of course. I always have to throw that in there to keep my butt safe and keep myself from getting sued. You need to talk to your vet, but that is an actual drug, so what that's doing, if you're giving your horse a round of GastroGuard, what you're doing, just like it does with people, it's an omeprazole, it's going to block the channels that secrete acid into the stomach. So you're removing that acid from the environment to kind of protect it, put a Band-Aid over that, let it heal, and then you remove the GastroGuard from that diet. So, just keep in mind that supplements, so you probably hear the dogs again, supplements are really intended to promote and try and restore a good gastric environment. Another thing important, because they aren't drugs, so like if you're feeding Outlast, or if you're feeding Nalox, or if you're feeding alfalfa, kind of like if you've ever taken Pepto-Bismol, you need to take another swig about 4 hours later, right? It's not going to last that 24 hours like a drug will. And so they have different activities. So, we think about things that we can do for a horse that's prone to gastric upset. Try and keep fiber flowing through the tract as often as possible. Incorporating those supplements can really help with appetite and sometimes even anxiousness, because horses that do have inflammation through the GI tract often aren't as happy and excited about eating as our horses that are healthy. So those are, just some things to keep in the back of your mind before feeding those. Or, if you see those on a tag and you're like, well, this is great, this product has all these pre and probiotics in it. A lot of people will look at that tag and say, oh, this is going to help with stomach ulcers, when in reality, pre and probiotics are going to target the hindgut. The gastric buffers, will target the stomach. So that's why when you had asked that question, I'm just like, oh, there's so much to talk about, and
Yeah.
it's a huge topic right now. And just the understanding that we used to think gastric ulcers were a racehorse problem, but we now know that, up to 70 to 80% of, performance horses suffer from gastric ulcers. Even our recreational horses, they did a study at this farm. So this is kind of an interesting story. They did a study with a herd where they had a pretend horse show. So they had this farm and they had this herd of horses all living happily together. And they took a group of those horses to this pretend horse show for the weekend, right? And they scoped all of the horses before the show. They scoped them all after. And what they found out is even the horses that stayed home and didn't go to the pretend show had gastric discomfort because their buddies had left. So we're just, we're kind of scratching the surface and understanding like, wow, there's a lot we do with horses that stresses them the heck out. Even putting them in a different paddock space, like that can cause gastric discomfort. Taking their friends away, if you've ever had your horse have a buddy at the farm, and God forbid that horse gets, a new home at a different farm, oh man, so it's the gastric thing is really interesting, and it's such a cool topic. And I love talking about the hindgut, the microbiome, not just in the horse, but in people, is such a huge area of study, and the microbiome is that whole community of bacteria and microbes that live in your digestive tract. And that when we're giving pre and probiotics, that we're targeting and trying to make that environment healthier. So it's a really cool topic. We don't really have enough time tonight, but it's fun to talk about. Clearly I like it. I worked with, the product that I worked with is a yeast fermentate, and prebiotics, even in humans, it's interesting stuff. And we eat fibers that are prebiotics every day, sometimes mostly without realizing it. But what those do, again, they put food into the system that helps those populations of good bacteria and microbes. So anyway, in a nutshell, those are very simple terms. First I did a little more than just say that for 5 years in my PhD program, but that's the gist of it. Eat more yeast, it's good for you. Any
Beer is good.
beer is good. Oh my God.
Yay.
So is wine, right? It's wine 30, it's 8:30, it's time. At any rate, any other question? Looks like Milena, you might have a question. Milena Maria.
Yes, one short thing. What is your opinion of Smart Pack has this bottle of aloe vera? That aloe vera supposedly is good for the stomach, for ulcers. My horse has had also, I mean, she hasn't had full-blown ulcers, but you know, we did like they scoped her, and she had some red areas, which I have been very on top of. So I heard of this supplement, and I wanted to know what your opinion is of like aloe vera, papaya, and that have pepticin or some component that is supposedly good for the lining of the stomach.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely aloe vera can help. I would say when you compare everything out there, like these different supplements, you know, there are some potential soothing properties to the gastric lining, although some of the best in terms of buffering, you know, what we're looking at is trying to buffer all the contents in that stomach. The best thing on the market right now for helping to keep that stomach as neutral as possible do seem to be some of these seaweed derived calcium products, even alfalfa. A lot of people swear by aloe vera, and I would trust it from Smart Pack. Sometimes when we buy, you know, kind of offer different brands of aloe vera, the source isn't always super great, and we don't always get the effects that we'd want to see. You know, I would trust it from Smart Pack. I would say aloe vera is one that I would say give it a try and see if you notice a response. It's one that's not going to hurt anything, although I would say from a data standpoint, you know, and every horse, remember, metabolizes and responds a little bit differently, but from a data standpoint, I would say that there's some stronger gastric buffering agents than aloe. But you know, there's so many farms I go into and every single horse gets a big squirt of aloe on top of their feed every day, and it's just part of their program. It's something affordable. And again, I'd say, you know, giving it a good 7 to 10 day try, or even if you did the Smart Pack a good 30-day try, would absolutely be worth it. Personally, I don't know if I'm completely sold on aloe, but I want you to try it for your horse and see if you notice a difference. There's a lot of things out there that are more anecdotal than really proven that we know work, but I'm a forever skeptic, and I'm trained to question everything and to believe what's proven, but I know that that's not always true. So I would say give it a shot. But again, like I mentioned previously, give yourself a good 7 to 10 days. And if you're like, you know, even up to a month and you're like, I'm not really seeing anything, you're probably right. So
thank you very much.
no problem. Okay.
All right. Good.
Well,
Yeah. Anybody else with any other questions? Because we've had you a lot longer than we expected to.
I talk a lot. I should have warned you. I talk a lot. I'll shoot you some information that if people would like to contact me, that they absolutely can. If you want some more info, and Holly will reconnect so I can confirm what days I'll be in that area. But yeah, we'll be heading down that way, and it's, you know, like I mentioned earlier, setting up a nutrition program and some of those other pieces. Just it's like a horse transformation. Like you think of your friends putting up their before and after pictures, you know, COVID 1 year and now 60 days into my training program after I gained 15 pounds during COVID. So I like to see a transformation, and that's what we do. So also check out my Equine Nutrition Education group and Legacy Equine on Facebook and the web. And thank you for inviting me and for having me. I love doing this, so I appreciate it.
Well,
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Okay, well,
Thank you very much.
have a good evening. I'm gonna hop off, but we'll talk again soon, I hope.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Okay, and thank you guys for coming. So she had a lot of great information.
Yeah, really cool.
Good.
Really cool.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.
on the Wonder Horse.